Welcome back to the Mojo Podcast with me, Richard Stokes. I hope you've had a great week. So 2 episodes into the new series and the reaction has been really gratifying so far. Thank you so much for everything you've said and all the social shares, the 5-star ratings and the incredible reviews. Nick called it inspirational, Phil said it offered lessons in life, and a wonderful anonymous reviewer just said, Mojo Mondays. And here we are, another Mojo Monday, or whenever you choose to tune in. Welcome, it's wonderful to have you. Really excited to bring you today's episode from a brilliant, deeply passionate guest, talking about a subject that will impact all of us, and that's money. Whether it's a lack of it, or making decisions about what to do with what we have can cause stress and anxiety. How can we think differently about money? How can we change our relationship with it? How can we even make money work better for us? And my guest this week is just an incredibly well-qualified person to talk to. Despite coming to the UK as a teenager, as a migrant, with literally nothing, he has beaten the odds in becoming a chartered accountant and a city high flyer, making millions for businesses and individuals through his knowledge. And now he's a full-time YouTuber, sharing his tips for greater financial independence with a large and growing global community. Ken Okoroafor is the humble penny. Well, as he points out, he's actually one half of a dynamic duo that creates and shares amazing money-based videos and blogs via the Humble Penny platform. His partner is his super talented wife, Mary. Together, they have set a vision for the life they really want to lead. Based on their life experience, core values, their beliefs, and passion to help more people realise financial joy and independence. We recorded this remotely, and as we settle into the conversation, you can hear Ken's energy and enthusiasm grow and grow. My word, this man has belief and passion, plus knowledge and skills, an incredible combination for peak mojo. He's chosen his path very deliberately, and now he and his wife are on a mission to show that path to more and more families. He's also my first guest to bring up this definition of mojo.
Mojo, baby, yeah!
Maybe I'll get Mike Myers on the show one day. Let's get into it, as there's so much great stuff in this conversation. Hope you love the conversation. Do share it, leave a 5-star rating, and invest in the show by leaving a short review. Thank you so much. Hello and welcome back to the Mojo Podcast. And I'm delighted to be joined by Ken Okoroafor, aka the Humble Penny.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking. Hello, Ken.
How are you doing, Richard?
I'm good. I should point out to people, obviously, I'm here in Ibiza, Ken's in London.
Yeah.
We're on a line. We can't see each other, so we're just trying to work out when we can best talk. But it's lovely to have you on the line, Ken.
It's good to be here, Richard. Really excited.
So tell me, how is your mojo today?
It's really, really good. It's really good at the minute. I'd probably say life feels pretty exciting at the minute, but there are aspects of it that I'm still trying to work out. So I'd probably say I'm probably a good 8 out of 10, something like that.
Solid 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
So lots of good stuff going on, but it sounds like, as you say, excitement, maybe a little bit of anxiety in that excitement.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair to say. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, we, as I mentioned in the intro, I found you via your incredible, YouTube channel, The Humble Penny, which we'll post links to, and I recommend anyone interested in investing and personal finance should check out. But I just wanted to start with a congratulations, because I noticed you hit incredibly 1 million views on YouTube.
Yeah, that came as a bit of a shock to us, to be honest, because we almost did not start the YouTube channel last summer. So it's come as a real shock, because just, when you're starting something, you just have no idea how you might be received. We feared being judged and, we just feared failure, but we just went ahead and focused on consistency and a bunch of other things I could talk to you about later if you're interested. But
yes, please.
And that seems to have done the magic. I just never saw it happening, but it's actually happened, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah. So this is incredible. You nearly didn't do it. You had that very human fear of maybe other people's opinions, fear of whatever we might call failure.
Yes.
But I'm very pleased you did, and here you are with a million views and helping a lot of people out with really practical advice about money. And money and Mojo is something that I think we can all relate that they do fit together. I'm not saying money is entirely necessary for your Mojo, but it's going to have an impact. So that's why I was really pleased that you could join us today.
Yeah.
And Ken, when I say Mojo, what does that word mean to you?
It's interesting because I kept thinking about that word. I remember seeing a movie a few years ago. Was it the Austin Powers movie? I can't remember which one it was now. And there was a
yes, that's the one.
Oh, that's the one.
That's the one.
And there was a mention all through that film about the Mojo, and I kept thinking, what does this really mean for me? And I think for me, what it means is just how I feel my life is at the minute. Kind of how it's aligned with how I want my life to be. And if I'm feeling a complete disconnect with where I really want to be, and I feel that I just don't have good mojo at the minute. So that's how I look at it. It'd be interesting to kind of know how you personally define it, but that's kind of how I look at it.
Well, I'm on this mission to really understand it deeper and deeper. And we're now into series 2 and got lots of different people's views on it. What you say there, I think you talk about connection, definitely comes through quite a lot. I think for people connected to their true purpose, perhaps.
Yes.
Does that ring? Does that
ring
true for you?
Yeah. Absolutely. Which is so interesting because that's really been a big part of my journey so far, career-wise, and kind of on this path with the Humble Penny and with Financial Joy Academy and what we're doing there. So yeah.
So I'd love to talk about exactly that, your journey, because here you are, as we said, million views on YouTube. You're doing incredible work and working with people to help them out with their own fears of investment and financial independence, which we'll talk about. But I'm going to guess this isn't maybe where you saw your life going when you were, I don't know, a teenager. Tell me a little bit about that, because I know you were born in Nigeria. And then you came over to the UK when you were a teenager. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So this is a really important part of my story. So I think of my life in two halves, essentially. My life so far in two halves. So first half was in Nigeria. I was born in Lagos, and I lived there till the age of 14, when we, took the big leap and left the country, left the African continent, and we did that mainly because there were lots of things going on, military coups, and it was my parents wanted a different, slightly safer environment for their children, a different experience, maybe. So we took away and moved here, and when we moved here, life was totally different to what we expected. At least what I expected. I expected I'd look across the road and see Buckingham Palace, but we ended up in a one room for 6 people in Walthamstow. Parents sleeping on the bed, kids on the floor, and that was the beginning. That was it. No money, no.
And is this the 80s? 90s?
No. This is 1998.
This is 1998.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. 22 years ago. In fact, almost to the day. Actually, a week ago made it 22 years exactly. And that's where life started. So I started essentially with literally nothing. So because I don't know if you know, but essentially when you immigrate to a new country, especially people from that part of the world, there are many challenges. There are just many challenges. And for us, it was even deeper because we moved here and realized that we'd moved here on the wrong visa. And that meant that we essentially got stuck in limbo for the next few years because the powers that be say to you, hey, look, you can't work, you can't go to use the NHS, you can't do anything, basically. You just have to wait for us. And that waiting turned into years. And that's literally a lot of my life story has come from sitting in limbo, staring at the skies, at the aeroplanes while everybody went on holiday, wondering where we're going to get the next.
So not being able to leave the country, obviously.
No,
Go
exactly.
anywhere.
Not being able to go anywhere, and basically hustling is the word, because you can't go to the job center to get a normal job, and your parents can't do the same. You have to be creative and think about how else you solve your problems. And for us, survival was just what we needed to do. So yeah, anyway, that's kind of how my journey started.
Yeah, but that sounds intrinsic, as you say, to who you are, your values.
Yes.
Well, probably a lot of them were cast about this time.
Yes, especially, because it's really interesting, because this is, a lot of my life at the minute is about family life, and a lot of the decisions we've made so far using money as a tool to to design the life we're seeing today and the life that we'll see in the near future has come from the fact that, when we were struggling many years ago, we needed to stick together as a family, you see, because we didn't have any allies. We didn't have anybody who was on our side. We had no friends per se, because when you don't have the rights to do the things you need to do in a country, you tend to be doing things in hiding. You tend to just want to keep your keep on below radar. And
I guess it's hard to know who to trust.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Scenario, right?
It's exactly that. So family, what that then did was that our family became very, very close. So even today, my sisters are entrepreneurs, my brother's an entrepreneur, my parents are entrepreneurial, run their own businesses. Even though they're retired, they still run their own businesses. We still do things. There isn't a mention in that. We still do things together, joint ventures and projects, because that's been built from that time, you see. And so anyway, that's fed into a lot of my values now around family life and togetherness and stuff like that.
And so incredibly difficult sort of entry to this new life in the UK by the sound of it. But you, I guess eventually visas came through and you could enter education. Tell us a little bit about that and where that kind of took you, what path you went on.
Oh, that's quite an interesting journey. So I've always thought about the fact that, because we arrived here pretty much behind everybody. So if you think I was 14 when I moved here, just think about my parents. So my mum was in her 40s and started at ground zero. So imagine being like 44 and having nothing like whatsoever to your name. So they had their own things to deal with as well. But in terms of education, I started, and I saw my way out being that I had to kind of hedge my bets, which is build a career, but at the same time, kind of build on the entrepreneurial path that was really inherent in my family life. And so I started out, I went to university, I read economics and accountancy. I did really well. I got a really good first class degree and went off to apply as a black man to become a chartered accountant. Didn't know a single black person who was an accountant. Anyways,
oh, right. So lack of role models in that particular.
Oh yeah, totally at the time. So I went and applied, and I got accepted into a top 10 firm in the UK as I trained. Finished again exceptionally well. Did passed all the exams first time, became chartered, and then pursued my career in finance. In the financial services here, which is where I went into the investment business. And for the last 13 years, I've worked in the investment business in the UK, in London specifically, rising in my positions across those years. And ending in April 2020, when I kind of took the leap to kind of into the business world. I was a chief financial officer for a venture capital business for 3 years. That was my last corporate role.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that sounds like obviously a huge year for you, and we're going to get into. 2020 has been kind of a crazy year for a lot of us. But I just wanted to tap into that, because here you are. You've migrant into the country. You've battled the odds, done exceptionally well through education. Been really driven to get into an industry which, as you said, it wasn't full of role models.
Yeah,
probably lots of barriers again.
Yes,
and grown in that career, and then you've decided to opt out.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah, so that's what's happened. It's a great question. So it's interesting, because I a big part of my journey has been about observing my parents and observing what they have done well and things that they wish they'd done differently. So
Mm.
when I met my wife, which is a critical part of my journey, so I met my wife in 2009.
Yeah.
We got together and got engaged. After a year, we then decided to start planning to get married. What was
Yeah.
critical about that, and this is tied to my career, is that we both decided that we had this 10-year plan over which we wanted to become financially independent. And
Mm.
what that meant to me and Mary was and that's my wife's name, Mary, is that we wanted to create a radically different life to the life our parents had, which was
Mm.
even by the time my dad retired at the age of 67, they still hadn't had their mortgage paid off, for example. And they were still battling to kind of get rid of that. And when I kind of observed my parents who spend most of their hours, every hour that was presented to them working to pave the way for us, we wanted something different. And we knew that money had a very important role to play. The lack of money, or the misunderstanding of money, or the misuse of money, even to plan for a
Mm.
future that you want. A lot of that played into the picture. And so we decided from 2009 that we will play the game slightly differently. And so I keep doing my career thing, but then the career became a vehicle for change. So it
Right.
wasn't just, oh, I'm doing this career because I want to obtain the next status and move up the ranks and become, oh, look at my nice title. It was more, I'm going to use this career as a vehicle to create the
Mm.
wealth we need to then create the life and the options that we desire. So
Right.
that
Right.
had always been the plan. So to answer your question in real simple terms, I took the leap after building such a career and with promises ahead. Because I'm only in my mid 30s. I could carry on for the next 30 years building and doing what everybody else does.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. The path well trodden.
yeah, exactly. But for me, I kind of lost the desire. It's probably the best way for that life,
Mm.
and I wanted a radically different life. One where, for example, if I wanted and I can choose to work 20 hours a week or up to 30 hours a week and spend the rest of the time being present for my children,
Mm.
having life experiences and doing the things that I wish I could have done, with my parents, for example, or just doing life differently. So I took that leap because I'd looked and, the path ahead is clear, because I've have very clear career path. Like I could carry on as a black man as well, who has executive experience. I'd probably go on to like a footsie board and, all of those things eventually.
Mm.
But that for me wasn't really, I didn't see that as the life. And a big part of my life became, well, how could I start to have impact in the world in a different way? I
Right.
didn't see my career as the vehicle for that. I kind of thought, well, actually, how else could I do life? And for me, that passion is where the humble penny comes in. The passion for wanting to see families get transformed financially, just as we were seeing a transformation in our lives. Imagine if many more families, on the back of our story and the back of what we're teaching, could suddenly have a generational shift in their finances. Just imagine what impact that could have. So for me, I kind of felt like, wow, okay, this is the thing I feel really excited about. And not making more rich people richer was not the thing, because I work in financial services, and that aspect was really about high net worths and super high net worths. Whereas in the ordinary life, I'd walk onto the street and people I'd meet, family members, would be struggling financially. And so I had to really make a call, which is, do I want to use my skills, my talents, my abilities, my experiences, my desires to serve a particular group of community, or do I want to try and do something more radical, more exciting, more fun? And so this is where on the back of 2020, which has been a really challenging year in many ways, this year had to be the year because
Yeah.
so many other things collided, with what we're seeing around the world globally with the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah.
This became the time to do it.
And I have to tell you, the energy you're talking with now is just coming down the line to me. I absolutely feel it from when you started
Yeah.
talking about that change.
This is my calling, Richard. This is the
I
thing.
can.
This is the thing.
It's clear. It's clear, and it goes right back to what you said at the beginning in terms of kind of what Mojo is for you. This
Yeah.
connection to purpose,
Yes.
and it sounds like you plugged right into that, and the electricity is flowing. And I'm sure all the listeners can feel that.
Yeah. No, listen, man.
That's
I
fabulous.
was, I slept, I woke up really late this morning. That's because I was working till late. I can do, when you can do something to the point where you're like, oh my God, is that the time? I need to probably go to sleep now.
Mm.
I was working on creating some content for YouTube. We also run a blog, creating some content for the blog. And for me, this has just become this huge passion, because I know that, when you do something and you're guaranteed that thing will have an impact on somebody somewhere around the world. You don't know who it is, but you know that they might write you an email 2 years from now, 3 years from now, going, Ken, remember that video you made, or remember that podcast you did, or remember that blog post you wrote. It will become, it's almost like sowing seeds that just go on to bear lots of fruit. So for me, I know that the thing we're doing is just like has huge purpose. Like it's, and this is the thing about taking for granted what you're good at and what your passion for things is, that the things we take for granted are the things that people out there desire. People really want to know the things that we think are just basic things, which is why the humble penny works. If you go to the YouTube channel, for example, or to the blog, the language is the same. I speak in very simple language. And my desire always is to communicate in a way that the ordinary man or woman on the street will be able to experience a transformation after they've kind of consumed the content. That's the goal.
Wow. So you had this, stepping back again a little bit when you met your wife, very clear intention that, you were going to do something different. And this sounds like it built and built and built.
Yes.
And you got to a point where, so what just tell us again, just a bit about that decision where it had built to the point of almost a tipping point.
Yes.
Was that a moment?
Yes.
Do you remember it?
Yeah. So a big critical part for us in terms of what was building was there were two aspects: is our financial lives and kind of what people might refer to as our net worth. One of the key aspects of that was our mortgage. We paid off our mortgage last year, 2019, for our home. And that for us was a big thing because it meant the optionality was just like, you couldn't put a price on the optionality you get from that in terms of what you might want to kind of do with your life, because most people kind of work to pay their mortgages for the rest of their lives. So we had done it in 7 years. But parallel to that,
Wow.
Yeah. So we, yeah. We
slightly jealous.
Yeah. No, but this is what can happen with intention, Richard. Like if there's an intention to make something happen, you can play a different game, right, to everybody else. So we started in 2012 to 2019. Anyway, but parallel to that, the career had been building. I'd been growing and developing and so on. And my wife had been supporting me with that because I've done my MBA and done all these things to kind of help me kind of take that leap and move ahead. But I was also working crazy hours, easily 50 hours, 60-hour weeks. And then on top of that, running my side hustles on the side, helping people, because we started Humping in 2017. So I was basically had this life where I was working crazy hours, 50 to 60 hours per week in my corporate life as a chief financial officer. And parallel to that, I was running the Humble Penny as its kind of founder and CEO, putting in 2 hours every single day, 7 days a week. I was working crazy hours.
Serious side hustle.
Yes.
That's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time. Exactly.
Yeah.
But the reason for that was because I was trying to prove to my audience that you can change the world with 2 hours per day. So it was an experiment. So yeah. This is, I love that. Yeah. This is a big experiment. It's a big part of one of my core beliefs, which is compounding, which you can see with money. Money compounds, time compounds as well. So if you can invest 2 hours per day into your side hustle over a year and then into 2 years, that time starts to compound and build this massive snowball. But anyway, that's a side thing, right? So I was trying to prove this experiment to my audience, which is that 2 hours per day is all you need to change your life and change the world around you. And this is what the Humble Penny represented, an experiment. But anyway, in terms of what was going on, this huge build-up started happening. And I knew that 2020 was going to be a year that something happened. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I had to do something because it became too much for me. And essentially, it got to the point where I had to start homeschooling. I had to start, still working those hours for my employer at the time. And the Humble Penny had gained a lot of kind of community and audience and what do you call it, popularity or whatever. And so I needed to keep delivering that. And that for me I saw that as my new vehicle for change. Yeah. So notice how the career was my previous vehicle for change, but I've now seen the Humble Penny as the future. So, the turning point essentially was in April 2020, where, essentially things had got to a point where I had a conversation with my employer and came to an agreement. And that agreement favored me very well. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to back myself fully now. I'm going to, pursue this thing that pursue my key core message, which is that, you can create your own life. You can create your own option. And, this is a time to actually prove that it works. And so I started that journey in April, and we're doing this interview a few months later, three or so months later. And it's been a fun adventure, Richard. It's not perfect. It's not by any means perfect, because there's a transition from the corporate life into doing your own thing. Which
how are you finding that now? It's not a 2-hour a day project. It's as you said, as much time as you want to put in. How are you finding that transition?
It's challenging. That's the honest truth, because in the corporate life, you have people you have some order. Like, you have a boss. For me, it was a chief exec. It's like, okay, this is what you need to do. Here are the projects. Here's what we're working towards. Here's a strategy. And so you're like, okay, yep, I get it. We're a team. We've got resources. That's very important. You've got a balance sheet that you're working on, right? You're using. But in your own world, it's different, because you now have to create your own balance sheet, your own kind of, just elaborate on that, just kind of your own asset base, your own money that you're using to kind of fund your project or your business. And plus, you don't have the order anymore. You don't have work colleagues that you say, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So you have to now create all of that in your own world now. You have to think, who's your team, and what's your strategy now? What's your long-term kind of vision and stuff like that? For us, this is where, I mentioned a thing we started called Financial Joy Academy, which then became a part of our long-term vision for what we're trying to do with the Humble Penny. So the last 3 months for me has been about putting in place some order, some rhythm almost, so that I could still operate in my family life. I can still go for my 1-hour walks and go for my runs and do all the things I want to do, but still put in 20 to 30 hours per week and still maintain my level of earnings that I would have been getting in a city. So essentially creating that life that we had always desired.
Wow. Amazing. And how much of that, you talk about that word order, comes through quite a lot. I'm guessing that comes almost from what you've learned in the corporate life. You wanted to have some things that, this is going to happen. If I do this, this will happen.
Yes.
Is that kind of what you strive to do with that?
Yeah. Because, a lot of my life in the last 12, 13 years has been about structure, because, I was the head of finance for most of the companies I worked for. So as a chief financial officer, you're there essentially to make sure that there's some order. You've got processes, systems, controls, that the money, you're not going bust, and stuff like that. So you're almost very defensive all the time and protecting the asset, which is the business in that instance. So that had become a core part of who I am. But what's interesting when you start running your own thing is that you have to become somebody else, because to be able to run your own thing, you have to have a visionary aspect to your life. So you have to think in the future a lot rather than in the present or the past. So as a CFO, I thought a lot in the present and in the past, whereas now I have to think a lot in the future and bring that future into the present, which is something that I had already, without knowing, been practicing with my money. Because with money, you have to think 10 years from now, what do I want to see? Like, what do I want to happen? Like, what do I want? What do I desire? And so,
thanks for bringing that. I've jumped in a bit, but that is an area I really want to talk to you about, because a lot of themes that come out, not just on my podcast, but lots of podcasts about happiness. It's around mindfulness. Yeah, and mindfulness is about being in the present and living your life for now.
Yes.
And not worrying about what's happened in the past and not stressing about what's coming in the future. Mm-hmm. However, as you say, with money is about the future.
Yes.
So how can we square that kind of circle in terms of, for me to be even more comfortable now, I do need to think a little bit about the future, but where's the balance? I guess I'm looking for some guidance here, Ken.
So the question I always ask everybody when I get a question that resembles that is, I always ask people, what is your life's vision? Okay.
Oh, it's a good question.
That's it. That's the question. What is your life's vision? Okay. Yeah. The reason that matters is because vision is all about the future. Whilst you're in the present, we're in the present right now, and we're talking about the future as though, because the vision has to be, you have to think about the future as though it were here. Yeah. So when Mary and I talked about our 10-year plan. We were talking about the future as though it were here. That 10-year plan started in 2009 and it started being implemented in 2010. We're now in 2020, 10 years later. And the life we're seeing now, the optionality, the time freedom, the financial freedom, a lot of that has come about because of the vision. So what I always ask people is yes, absolutely, to being very present in the moment. But begin to ask yourself, because a lot of our life's philosophy is about life design. What sort of life do you want? Like if you had to design it, if you had a big A3 sheet of paper and you had to paint what your life wanted to look like, what are the components that are in there? How many hours do you want to be working? What sort of income do you want to be generating? How many children or not do you have? Where are you and your partner? Where are you living? What does work mean for you? What sort of impact do you want to be having in the world? These are all simple but critical questions that play a part of your life's vision, right?
Yeah.
So that's how when you say how do you square that, that's how I square it, which is, do you have an answer to that question, which is, what is your life's vision? Because if you do, what that then does is, because if you've mapped out what you believe you want your life's vision to be, what that then does is that it activates a level of action in your mind. So every single day you are in the present, but you are working towards that life's vision.
Got it. So yes, I love that. And that's, sitting here, that's very helpful for me, thinking about, okay, without spending all your time not being present and in the moment, which we know is a very healthy thing to do, but with that little bit of thought and that great question around vision, which I think is a beautiful way of looking at it, that links back to that word intent for me, and that intention.
Yeah.
And when we're full of intention, we're much more likely for things to happen. I think when you put things, however you want to describe it, if you put it out into the universe, it tends to come back. It certainly won't if you keep it kind of within yourself. That's certainly my belief.
Yeah. And it helps you, this is the thing, it helps you know what you don't want. Right? Because every day we're presented choices. People are like, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? So you can go, well, actually, no, I don't want to do this because of this, because you know, like what you're working towards, right? So it helps you push away distractions. And that's helped me a lot when I think about the Humble Penny and what we've done, Financial Joy Academy, our vision. A lot of that's happened because I'm able to say, well, actually, these things don't align with our vision. Those things don't align with our vision. We will say no to them. And no is a good thing, by the way. No is therapeutic.
Right. Tell me about that. What have you said no to?
Oh, my goodness. I get an unbelievable number of requests for things every single week. It might be invitations to podcasts. It might be invitations to events. Come and do this live stream. Come and speak at this place in Buckinghamshire or in wherever in the world. Come and do this. Come and do that. Every single day, things fly in. Yeah, but there has to be a filter that you have. Otherwise, you will limit your impact in the world. There has to be a limit on what you can say yes to, and that sort of stuff. So, I just have almost an inbuilt way of knowing. You always know inside what you think is something that you should perhaps entertain or do.
The gut.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you always know, right? So I just, I kind of turn that filter on and process what I really want to do, what I think aligns with that future vision.
Yeah, and that's great. As you said, that word, impact that came out for me there. You talked about that at the beginning. That's what you want to have. So if you are saying yes to everything, kind of being nice, you're going to dilute what your potential is.
Yes.
But if you're actually kind, I think it's my difference between nice and kind. If you're kind, you're very clear about this is actually aligns to what I'm trying to do. Great, we can do that. That not so much. So I have to make that kind decision for me and for the person that's put that opportunity to me. And by the way, thank you very much for saying yes to this podcast. I'm very pleased.
No, thank you. Thank you for welcoming me. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, good. And we're not finished yet. I think we've got a little bit more time. I'd like to talk a little bit more about what's happening with plans now for the Humble Penny.
Yes.
You talked about your journey to this incredible move to quitting the corporate career to being 100% in the Humble Penny. And also want to talk about, you talked a bit about your wife, and then you talked
Yes.
about partnership. I'd like to talk about that as well, in terms of how important it is doing this as a couple. Let's start there. Actually, let's talk about
let's
a
talk
family
about that.
business.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
that alignment, that relationship with a very trusted partner,
Yes.
i.e., in your case, your wife.
Yes.
What does that bring you? What's that allowed you to do by doing this together?
Okay, so that's really powerful. So we started a Humble Penny 3rd of December 2017. When we were starting the Humble Penny, I looked out. I got to be honest with you, Richard. I had that imposter syndrome. I had fear, and I tell you why I had fear. I did not know a single black man in the UK that ran a personal finance website, especially not one with a surname like mine that no one can pronounce. I feared being judged by everybody, and I feared failing, if I'm honest with you. But my wife has played a critical role because she actually believed in me. She believed that I had a voice that people needed to hear, and I had a message to put out to the world. And so she supported me in every way. In fact, the name The Humble Penny, when we were doing a brainstorm for names for this website and this what has become a platform, my wife actually came up with that name, The Humble Penny.
Brilliant.
And we went and searched for it, and it was available for 99p, and we bought it. Exactly. So this has been a journey where I've been driving this thing, and then my wife has then observed and supported me in various ways using her skills and using her emotional intelligence. Okay. And that support has been invaluable, because there are times when you're doing things, especially at the beginning, and you don't see any fruit from your labor. You don't feel like you're planting seeds, but you're not seeing it bearing any fruit. And that happened, at least for the first year of running this, nothing happened. It was just me sowing, creating, but nothing was happening. There was no visible income. There was no, nothing. There was no validation that this is the thing that's I'm meant to be doing. Apart from that, I enjoyed it and it was really fun. And she's just always believed. She's always just said, yeah, okay, we need to put the kids to bed. Yeah, but you need to finish this article you're doing. Yeah, keep doing it. I'll put the kids to bed. Stuff like that. It's your turn to cook dinner today, but you are still trying to get this thing out. So you promise somebody, okay, you keep doing that. I will cook the dinner tonight. So there's just been that constant backup, even whilst I was pursuing my career, I went off to do an executive MBA. My wife was the person who had to stay and, look after the children whilst running the home and doing all those things. So for me, this is entirely a team game. Yeah. There is no singularity. There's no, like, I'm the guy or, any of that. Like everything you see is possible because I have support. Everything.
Yes. And so you're in front of the camera and she's behind the camera.
Correct.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
She's the content genius.
Yeah, and when the ideas come out, when the thing is filmed, she edits them. She does every single video on our channel has been edited by my wife. Every single one. Every single video, every single blog post on the Humble Penny has a graphic in it, has been designed by my wife. She has a footprint across everything we're doing. So it's a complete team game. The vision, the thoughts, the ideas, what we're trying to do. We talk about them as a couple. And what's that done? What that's done for us is it's really improved our marriage. Sometimes we disagree on stuff. And sometimes we're like, maybe you shouldn't have done that way and so on, which is what happens with couples normally. But what it's really done for us is that it's just improved our communication. It's improved our marriage. And it's just brought us closer together and giving us a sense of purpose. So when I talk about the Humble Penny, I am always very deliberate to make sure I talk about my wife because, my wife plays an integral role in what we're doing, just like right now, as I'm doing this interview, she's, dealing with the children. They're out in the garden, you see my point. So it's a real teamwork. It's a real teamwork. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And do you have to, it sounds like obviously, again, very clear and intentful about it. Do you have to check in with each other on a regular basis to are we still, is this what we want to be doing? I.e., are her ambitions being fulfilled at the same time? I guess is the question.
Yes. Well, exactly. So we play different roles within what we're doing at the Humble Penny, and my wife plays the kind of creative role and And so she's using her talents and abilities. And a big part of her passion has been about helping families, helping young women kind of progress with their finances. So a big part of when we think about our vision, we're always kind of tapping into that. Is what you're doing within what we're doing, helping you fulfill what you feel your calling is, for your life. And that remains a work in progress, because you're building into the future, and every day is a new challenge, is a new opportunity. And so you're always weighing these things up, and communicating is probably the most important thing. We're always talking. Does this align with what we're doing? Does this fit our voice? Because we're very intentional about the way we project ourselves, because, what's very important, my wife and I talk about this, we call them HIT stories, HIT, honesty, integrity, and transparency. We like to tell HIT stories. And so
honesty, integrity, transparency.
That's it.
Love it.
That's it.
Tell me more.
Yeah. So that plays a big role in our what we call like our core values, basically.
Yes.
And so that has meant that we are truly ourselves everywhere. So we're not trying to be one person at home and somebody else, say, on YouTube, or somebody else on the blog, or somebody else on an interview. We have to be present in the same way everywhere.
Yeah.
So what that means is that it gives us essentially an element of radical authenticity. So we're exactly who we are. And so that means if somebody comes along and says, hey, come and work with us on this sponsorship, on this thing that you don't believe in, we will say, no, thank you.
Okay, so back to those decision-making areas, right? Easy to make decisions when you're really clear about your values.
Yeah, exactly. Everything's value-driven. It's literally... we don't believe in this, and so therefore this is kind of how we operate. This is just our approach to life. And that helps us. What that really does for us is it helps us identify who our tribe are, who our people are. Yes. The people you essentially like attracts like. That's that's what happens, right? So if you project a certain approach to life, you get back what you put out there, in a sense. And so what we find is that we get a lot of engagement from our audience. We have a very strong community because they understand what our core values are. And we lead the Humble Penny and Financial Joy Academy through our core values, our life philosophies, and so on. That's what we preach. We preach what we do, and that's kind of it. That's what the appeal is.
Yeah. And good for you, because, there's a myriad of content choice out there for people in various different areas. But by being yourself, and it's much easier to be yourself, it takes a lot less energy.
Yeah.
People get, right, yes, I like what I see.
Yeah.
And whether I meet you in person, I hear you on a podcast, I read your blog, it's the same Ken.
Yes.
And that's I think exactly where you want to be.
Yeah.
So Ken, we touching a little bit now on kind of future plans.
Yes.
I always like to sort of get a sense of you talked about, this is a journey. It's not complete in any way.
No.
It sounds to me like at the beginning.
Thank you. It is. It feels like that.
Yeah. And you've got a huge amount of energy. Where do you want to take this? Where do you want to take the Humble Penny?
So thank you for asking me. That's a really important question for me, because I talk a lot about vision. The big vision that we have, and this is where our sister company, Financial Joy Academy at financialjoyacademy.com, comes in, is that on the 29th of February 2020, Mary and I launched Financial Joy Academy. What it is essentially is it's helping to deliver our core mission, which is that we're trying to do something that seems almost impossible, which is to help 10,000 families become financially independent this decade, from 2020 to 2030. Now, this is like, we picked that number because it feels like an almost impossible number. Though my wife's
big number.
Yeah, my wife says to me, "That's actually, we're going to break that." But this has become our core thing. Is how, and I'll tell you where it came from. So people will come to me, Richard, and say, "Ken, can you offer me some one-to-one coaching?" I'd say yes, and they'd say, "How much is it?" And I'd say to them, "It's this much money." And then they'd go, some of them would go, "Actually, sorry, I can't afford it." Yeah. Understood. Perfectly understandable. And I go, okay, fine. So the problem then became, we have a particular life experience. We understand many things that can transform many families. How do we get those across to them in an affordable way? How do I impact from London or from Kent, where we actually live? How do I impact positively? How am I transforming somebody's life in Manchester, or even in Lagos, or even in Johannesburg, or even in Los Angeles, or in Birmingham? How do I do that from here?
Yeah.
We decided to create something on the internet. So Financial Joy Academy is a membership program, essentially we price at around £1 a day. And what it does is it helps to distribute premium content and group coaching and networking and community all online. So every 2 weeks, we show up on Zoom and we answer people's questions for an hour to 90 minutes. We create amazing courses. We have about 16 courses so far across all aspects, whether it's you starting a YouTube channel, whether it's you wanting to invest your money, whether it's you wanting to improve your personal brand. These are all courses and masterclasses. So every single month, we have a new course, a new masterclass from an expert in a particular area. And all this is available for the same £1 per day. And it keeps growing into the future. And the beauty is that it's a step-by-step program. So anyone, anywhere can plug in and say, I want to create my own personalized plan for my financial independence. Here's how I'm going to do it using your program, essentially. And then they plug in, and very cheaply, cheaper than a takeaway, they can essentially feel connected to a real community, feel connected to what we're doing. And anyway, that's our plan. Our plan is it's a plan for the 10,000. And it feels impossible, Richard, but that's what's exciting about it. Because we're doing something that we know will change lives now, but will cause a generational shift. That's the impact. That's what we're aiming for.
And that's amazing. And that you know, this is a recurrent theme for me, and what we've talked about, this idea that you planting seeds and just knowing it's the right thing to do, and in time that's going to have an incredible impact on, as you say, not just a few families, but 10,000, maybe even more. With the energy that you and your wife have got, I dare say that you're going to smash that target pretty quickly.
Yeah, we are absolutely hopeful. We're in this full time. This is the point to make. We're not part timers. We're in this. This is our core thing. Like we sow in abundantly, and we know. We believe in what we're doing. We know we're doing it with the right intent, and for that reason, we believe what we're doing is the right thing. So
fabulous. And just before I love this conversation. Energy coursing through my veins. Thinking about visions, all sorts of things for my own family.
Yeah.
I'm getting all this energy from you. But what do you do? Just give me 3 things that you do personally that keeps this mojo flowing for you, this energy flowing for you. What's your self-care?
So first is that I pray. So I'm a prayer. I do praying, and that just helps me connect to a higher power. Second thing is I eat very well. So Mary, my wife, is our chief cook, and we basically eat what we're told. Me and our boy, our two sons. So basically, we have a strict plant-based diet at home,
right?
And it just works for us personally.
Yeah.
And the third thing is that I try to do as much walking as I can. So I find walking quite relaxing. It just helps me to reflect upon life and just what I need to do next and stuff like that. And I tend to listen to music when I go for my walks. I really like music without any words. So I like very simple kind of music from like compositions from like films and stuff. That sort of music just, I don't know what it does for me. It just does something for my mind, my state of mind. And I hear my own voice better. And so that helps. And then anyway, outside of what's going on in the world, we like to travel. We love traveling. And I wish, and I cannot wait. I don't know if I mentioned on this podcast yet, but we're planning. And this is, it's still in the works, but we're planning. What we've been working towards is taking all of August off. A big part of our experiment again. Yeah. We're trying to prove again that you can run an online business. And if you've kind of pre-created and pre-uploaded and pre-done everything you can afford to take a big part of the month off. So we're doing a mini sabbatical. We're hoping, all going well, to hire a slightly faster car than our current electric car, our Nissan Leaf that doesn't go too far away, and hoping to just go and see the rest of the UK. Just hoping to just go and see some of the landscapes and so on with our children and just have some experiences. So anyway, that's another thing we kind of do is traveling. Yeah,
I can imagine you driving somewhere, I don't know, in the Highlands of Scotland with one of those film soundtracks playing.
Oh, do you know what?
In a very good place.
That would be a dream. I tell you now, right? That would be a dream for me.
A very good place. Ken, I tell you what, as I said a minute ago, I've loved this conversation. Lots of energy going on for me, hopefully. I'm sure for listeners as well. Thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Just a great Mojo story. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you for having me on.
There you go. I told you it was good. That energy from Ken is infectious and electric. I was buzzing after we recorded. So a massive thank you to Ken for spending time with me. He's a lovely man and indeed has given me much to think about myself and my family and our future vision. And yes, the very top takeout for me is about vision. Having a vision for life, which came from his upbringing, is central to so much for Ken and his wife. It sets their goals, their path, helps with decision making and with the authentic voice that they bring to their platform, and has enabled them to create new products and services. And it's the key to his mojo as a measure of how connected he is to that vision at any one time. You know what also came up for me in this conversation, and you may have come across the Japanese concept of ikigai, or reason for being. Now, I don't have time to go into the detail on this right now, but it's essentially the coming together of passion, mission, professional and the vocational. And they really do seem to summarise Ken's approach really, really well. I might try and do a Mojo toolkit to explain Ikigai a little bit more, so watch this space. And the other idea that Ken puts out there, or one of many he put out there, is about what could you do with 2 hours a day? How can you change the world with 2 hours a day? And that's my challenge to maybe leave with you after this Mojo podcast. What could you do with that 2 hours a day? And I know, look, we don't all have a spare 2 hours a day knocking around. But I know that many of us are now, for example, not commuting anymore. Does that add up to 2 hours? Maybe. What could you do with that commute time? Now, there are loads of resources from Ken as the Humble Penny that you can get involved with. The YouTube channel is just brilliant, super consistent, very, very clear and very straightforward advice. There's also the new Financial Joy community he mentioned. Perhaps you'd like to be one of the 10,000 families he and his wife support. And all the other relevant links, such as his Instagram account, are there in the show notes. And Ken's choice of music, his Mojo soundtrack, is a real cracker, very atmospheric. So go and check that out on the Spotify playlist that's nicely developing. Again, that link in the show notes. Next week, from money to colour, I talk to colour psychologist Karen Harler about the impact of colour on our lives and how we can be more aware of its impact on us and on people around us, be that family, friends, clients and customers. So thanks for spending time with the Mojo podcast today. I know there are plenty of demands on your time, so I really appreciate you dropping by. The best way that you can show you're enjoying the podcast is to share it with friends, leave a 5-star rating, and as I say, write that short review on Apple Podcasts. All of which help make the Mojo podcast more discoverable to more people. Until next week, I hope your mojo continues to flow.